Imagine it's 50,000 BC. No phones, no Netflix, no emails. Just you, a dark cave, and a blinding cloud of campfire smoke blowing directly into your face. Now, imagine looking at that choking smoke and thinking, wait, what if I breathed that in on purpose? Most people think smoking started with Columbus or colonial trade routes. But the truth is much crazier. The urge to inhale smoke is actually hardwired into our DNA, and it might be as old as fire itself. Here is the insane, untold story of how humans actually discovered smoking. 1. The primordial nexus of humanity, fire, and smoke. Imagine standing in the pitch black of a prehistoric night, roughly 50,000 years ago. The sun has dipped below the horizon, and the world is instantly plunged into a terrifying, unforgiving darkness. There are no smartphones to distract you, no digital screens to illuminate the dark, and certainly no modern anxieties about a cluttered work inbox. There is only you, the crackling heat of the flames, and a thick, choking plume of wood smoke curling directly into your eyes and lungs. For our ancient ancestors, this wasn't an occasional weekend camping trip. It was the baseline reality of daily survival. They coexisted with fire because they absolutely had to. It provided warmth against the brutal glacial chill, offered a lethal shield against apex predators lurking in the shadows, and transformed raw, bacteria-ridden meat into digestible sustenance. Inhaling smoke was completely unavoidable. It was the original air quality crisis, yet nobody had an app to monitor the hazardous PM2.5 levels. Millions of individuals, spanning thousands of generations, breathed in these airborne particulates every single day of their lives. As we sit around our modern digital campfires sharing these incredible evolutionary mysteries, it makes you wonder how many of our daily habits are actually hardwired into our biology. If you find these deep dives into human history and behavioral psychology fascinating, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss our upcoming explorations. Because somewhere in that hazy, distant past, a lone ancestor looked at that swirling campfire smoke and decided to change the course of human history. They moved past passive inhalation and asked a revolutionary question: what if I did that on purpose? This marked the true, undocumented birth of smoking. 2. The accidental euphoria and the endocannabinoid lock. The chemistry of a simple campfire is far more complex than it appears on the surface. When early humans gathered wood, they weren't just collecting uniform logs. They were gathering a massive variety of local flora, including wild shrubs, dense brush, and dried herbs. When organic matter undergoes combustion, it doesn't merely produce harmless carbon dioxide and simple water vapor. Instead, it unleashes a complex, highly volatile cocktail of chemical compounds, including active alkaloids and aromatic terpenes, depending entirely on the specific plant species being burned. Inevitably, our ancestors ended up throwing psychoactive plants, like wild cannabis or primitive strains of Nicotiana, directly into the central hearth. As these unique plants burned, they filled the poorly ventilated caves with dense, chemically altered smoke. The people sitting downwind didn't just cough. They experienced a sudden, inexplicable shift in their consciousness. Their muscles relaxed, their sensory perception shifted, and a profound wave of unearned well-being washed over the entire group. They were experiencing the world's very first accidental high. What makes this phenomenon truly mind-blowing is the underlying neurobiology. The human brain possesses a highly specialized network known as the endocannabinoid system, which naturally regulates critical functions like mood, memory, sleep, and pain perception. When that prehistoric human inhaled the smoke of a burning cannabis plant, their neural pathways weren't confused or rejected by the foreign substance. On the contrary, the molecular structure of the plant's cannabinoids fit perfectly into the brain's pre-existing cellular receptors, like a key sliding into a lock. The brain was essentially waiting for this exact chemical trigger. This profound biological compatibility suggests that our affinity for inhaling smoke isn't a learned cultural quirk of modern civilization, but rather an ancient chemical relationship. It was a pleasant accident repeated so many times across generations that it eventually sparked an intentional behavior. 3. Unearthing prehistoric habits, the archaeological record. When we attempt to trace the tangible origins of intentional smoking, we run into a massive scientific hurdle: the fragile nature of organic preservation. Stone tools can easily survive intact for 3 million years because rock is practically indestructible against the elements. However, a wooden pipe, a leather pouch filled with dried herbs, or charred leaves will completely dissolve back into the earth within a few centuries under normal soil conditions. Therefore, in the field of archaeology, the absence of physical evidence is absolutely not definitive proof of absence. For decades, historians operated under the assumption that smoking was a relatively recent development in human history. They believed it was a practice that only emerged alongside the rise of structured agriculture and formal pottery. However, groundbreaking modern discoveries have completely shattered this conservative timeline, continually pushing the boundaries of what we know about our ancestors back further into the mists of time. The most paradigm-shifting evidence emerged during a 2019 excavation in the harsh environment of the Great Salt Lake Desert in Utah. There, meticulous researchers uncovered a pristine, intact domestic hearth dating back an astonishing 12,000 years. Inside the ancient ash, they discovered a heavy concentration of seeds belonging to Nicotiana attenuata, a potent species of wild tobacco native to North America. These seeds hadn't drifted into the fire by random chance. Their dense arrangement strongly indicated deliberate human placement and management. This discovery pushed back the timeline of human tobacco interaction by several millennia, long before the invention of pipes or agricultural cultivation. Meanwhile, on the other side of the globe in Central Asia, archaeologists exploring the high-altitude Pamir Mountains found wooden braziers from 500 BC. These contained superheated stones covered in cannabis residue with exceptionally high THC levels. This proved that ancient peoples were systematically selecting and burning specific plants for intense ritual inhalation. 4. The intoxication hypothesis and the universal fourth drive. To fully comprehend why humans are so drawn to inhaling burning substances, we must look beyond history and examine evolutionary anthropology. Scientists have long noted a fascinating universal truth. Every single human culture ever documented throughout history has developed some method to intentionally alter its consciousness. Whether through drinking fermented fruits, consuming psychedelic fungi, chewing bitter leaves, or inhaling toxic smoke, the desire to escape standard reality is omnipresent. This behavior is so persistent and independent across completely isolated global populations that it cannot be dismissed as a random social fad. Instead, famous psychopharmacologists like Ronald Siegel proposed the groundbreaking intoxication hypothesis. This theory argues that the pursuit of altered mental states is actually a foundational, biological drive embedded deep within animal behavior. It functions as a powerful fourth drive, operating right alongside our primal impulses for hunger, thirst, and sexual reproduction. This drive is visibly evident across the entire animal kingdom, proving it predates humanity itself. In the plains of Africa, majestic elephants will travel for miles to gorge themselves on rotting, fermented marula fruit, specifically to experience drunkenness. In the frozen forests of Siberia, wild reindeer actively seek out toxic Amanita muscaria mushrooms, intentionally consuming them to hallucinate, and will even fight over the psychoactive urine of their herd mates. If wild animals willingly risk their survival to alter their minds, it stands to reason that early humans did the same. Long before they understood chemistry, our ancestors engaged in high-stakes trial and error with local plants. They discovered which smoke brought euphoria and which smoke brought agonizing death. Those who survived this dangerous experimentation passed down the invaluable knowledge through oral traditions. They proved that the drive to smoke wasn't born out of modern addiction, but out of a deep-seated evolutionary impulse. 5 ancient inhalers. Smoke as the original medicine. From a modern perspective, the idea of using smoke as a health treatment seems completely counterintuitive, if not outright insane. We are bombarded with medical warnings about the severe dangers of smoke inhalation and its destructive impact on respiratory health. Yet, for thousands of years, the absolute reverse was true. Long before smoking became a casual recreational habit or a widespread commercial industry, it was viewed as a highly advanced medical technology. The logic behind this ancient practice was surprisingly sound given the limitations of the era. Ancient physicians recognized that when a patient swallows a medicine, it takes a long time to digest and affect the body. However, smoke travels directly into the lungs and enters the bloodstream almost instantly. Therefore, if a specific plant possessed powerful healing properties, delivering it via targeted inhalation was the fastest, most direct therapeutic method available. This medical philosophy is thoroughly documented across almost every major ancient civilization. The famous Ebers Papyrus of Egypt, a medical text dating back to 1550 BC, contains detailed prescriptions directing patients to inhale the smoke of heated herbs to alleviate severe respiratory distress. Hippocrates, the revered father of Western medicine, frequently prescribed therapeutic herbal fumigations to treat deep-seated lung diseases. Meanwhile, in ancient India, the foundational texts of Ayurvedic medicine outlined a highly sophisticated practice known as dhumapana, which literally translates to smoke drinking. This wasn't a casual pastime. It was a rigorous medical system that utilized specialized pipes to inhale customized herbal blends, such as henbane and various aromatic resins. These plants actually contained genuine pharmacological compounds that dilated airways and relieved pain. In an ancient world completely devoid of modern antibiotics or advanced nebulizers, this primitive form of targeted inhalation was a meaningful medical breakthrough. 6. Social infrastructure and the power of the smoke circle. Human beings are, at their core, intensely cooperative social animals. Throughout our long evolutionary history, our physical survival depended entirely on the internal cohesion of the tribe. An isolated individual facing the harsh wilderness alone was guaranteed a swift death, whereas a tightly knit group could successfully hunt large game, defend territory, and raise offspring. Because group survival was paramount, any cultural tool or ritual that enhanced mutual trust and internal bonding held immense evolutionary value. This is exactly where the shared consumption of psychoactive smoke entered the picture. When a group of early humans gathered in a cramped, enclosed shelter and collectively breathed in psychoactive vapors, they weren't just partying. They were utilizing a primitive but highly effective form of social technology designed to bind individuals into a single, cohesive unit. Modern neuroscience explicitly validates this ancient practice. Studies show that participating in synchronized group rituals causes human brains to mirror one another's neural activity, drastically increasing empathy, lowering defensive social barriers, and fostering deep communal trust. The ancient smoke circle functioned as an essential piece of psychological infrastructure. It created a shared, altered reality that made individuals feel profoundly connected to one another on a spiritual level. We see this vividly in the historical accounts of the Scythians, a fierce nomadic people of the Eurasian steppe described by the Greek historian Herodotus. They would gather inside small, sealed felt tents, toss wild hemp seeds onto glowing red-hot stones, and collectively inhale the dense, rising smoke. Herodotus noted that they would howl aloud with pure pleasure. This shared ecstatic experience created a powerful collective identity, transforming individual warriors into a unified, fearless force capable of surviving the brutal realities of their world. Number 7. The sacred carrier, tobacco in the pre-Columbian Americas. To truly understand the tragic evolution of smoking, we must examine the specific history of tobacco within its native home, the Americas. Long before European contact in 1492, the genus Nicotiana was completely unknown to the rest of the world. For thousands of years, indigenous cultures across North and South America developed a profoundly respectful relationship with this powerful plant. Crucially, in these societies, tobacco was almost never used as a casual, everyday recreational habit. The concept of standing outside an office building to hastily chain-smoke a cigarette would have been viewed by ancient Americans as an act of absolute madness and deep spiritual sacrilege. To them, tobacco was a holy medicine, a sacred gift from the earth that required immense discipline and spiritual reverence to use. In indigenous traditions, tobacco functioned as a vital bridge connecting the physical world to the divine spiritual realm. Shamans and tribal leaders utilized the plant in intense healing ceremonies, major political councils, and the solemn binding of historic treaties between rival tribes. The rising smoke itself was viewed as a living, breathing entity, a sacred messenger that physically carried human prayers upward toward the heavens and brought divine visions downward to the community. Blowing tobacco smoke over an individual was a profound gesture of blessing, protection, and deep mutual respect. Because the plant was treated with such reverence, its consumption was naturally self-limiting and deeply controlled. It was integrated into the core fabric of their cultural and spiritual lives, ensuring it remained a positive tool for community guidance rather than a destructive, uncontrolled personal vice. 8. The Great Distortion. From sacred ritual to global industry. The historical trajectory of smoking changed forever in the late 15th century when Christopher Columbus and his crew landed in the Caribbean. The European explorers were utterly bewildered by the sight of indigenous people casually inhaling smoke from rolled-up dried leaves. Naturally, the sailors tried it themselves, contracted the habit almost instantly, and carried the strange new plant back across the Atlantic. What followed was a historic disaster of unprecedented proportions. Within a few short decades, tobacco evolved from a localized, sacred indigenous ritual into a global capitalistic obsession. By the 17th century, it had become a dominant global currency. By the 20th century, the invention of the mass-manufactured industrial cigarette completely transformed the habit, making tobacco consumption cheaper, more accessible, and vastly more addictive than anything else in human history. The ultimate tragedy of this transition lies in the vast moral chasm between the ancient shaman and the modern tobacco executive. Both worked with the exact same plant, yet their intentions could not have been more opposed. While the shaman used tobacco to foster spiritual health and tribal unity, modern corporations actively engineered their products to maximize physical dependency and corporate profits. Throughout the 20th century, mega tobacco corporations spent billions of dollars intentionally burying internal scientific data that linked smoking directly to terminal lung cancer. They aggressively marketed their lethal products to vulnerable teenagers, paid off medical professionals to issue fraudulent endorsements, and added highly toxic chemical compounds to ensure the nicotine hit the user's brain faster and harder. They took an ancient, deeply communal human instinct, the primordial desire to gather around a fire and share an altered breath, and weaponized it into an extractive commercial industry that has claimed hundreds of millions of lives.